have you changed? All right, I'm going to call us to order. It's now 6:33, and roll call. Everyone's here except for Kevin Chow right now. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? No. Hearing no items, I'll move to the consent calendar and move to approve it so we can cover it. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
The poor seconded. All right. All right. Well, now that we're on the consent calendar, any questions? Any presentation, Kevin?
No.
Okay. And no questions? No. Okay. Well, then I call the question.
Director Wisnowski?
Yes.
Director Sethi?
Yep.
Director Bajaj?
Yeah.
Director Racy?
Yes.
That it?
Yep.
All right. I guess I didn't hear Bajaj. Must have blanked out for a second there. Anyway, moving to item 6, discussion and action items, review and adopt proposed fiscal year 2022 draft budget. You have anything to present on that, Kevin?
Yes, I'm going to pull it up right now. I've got this fancy Google slide presentation for everyone. So this is the proposed budget. I'll go over an orientation, look at some of the assumptions that we used while putting this together, and we'll have a top level summary, budget detail, and of course, for some questions. There we go. Okay. First, let's just quickly review the fiscal year. So what you're looking at in that's kind of bolded, that's a calendar year. You've got your quarters, January through March, April through June, et cetera, et cetera. We're pretty familiar with it. January through December. It's really nice because all of your program revenue for the summer, one summer is in one calendar year. Make a change in one of your programs, it's going to show because all of that is in that one calendar year. When you contrast that to fiscal year, you're really splitting it apart into 2 different years. And so what's going to happen is if you do any kind of a program change, most of that program change is going to be in the prior fiscal year as opposed to the next fiscal year. July, August, September, which is really heavy. And this one really only has parts of June, which is the effect is going to be pushed towards the first. Something important to note is that the fiscal year is named after the year that it ends in. So if I say something like fiscal or FY21, what that really means is July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021. And again, that program revenue, if there's any changes, will be split. So a couple of things to note. One is that, of course, the business environment continues to be very challenging. There's business restrictions which we can't really predict. And user behavior, we're not really sure whether there's going to be a big rush to get back into the pool or whether people will be a little bit afraid to be around other people. Not quite sure yet. Another thing to note, and this is big, is that depreciation is about $57,000. It's not included in the expense section. And as a result, the actuals are not going to match the audit that we just looked at last month. So if you wanted to get those closer together, you would take the expense that we are showing today, and you're going to add around $57,000, and it'll be pretty close. I've also allocated some funding to the potential site master plan that we talked about at the board workshop for the strategic visioning process. I made an estimate. I don't know whether it's going to be close. Again, we'd have to do a competitive bidding process. That is to happen. Number 4, we're going to be using the fiscal year. So that means July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. And of course, comparisons between years will be very difficult, and I'll tell you why in a sec. So what we're looking at right here is a top-level summary of the last couple of years. And the reason why every year is not going to be very comparable to each other is that each year is totally different. FY 2019 is really July 2018 through June, the last normal year that we had. So if you want to think about what we expect maybe a few years from now, I would look at that one. You can see the expenses are around 808,000 and our revenues about 990,000, net income of 180, not including depreciation. FY20, again, this is kind of a slightly stunted year because the last 2-3 months of the year we were completely shut down. And it did have an effect on revenue and expense, but not that much. As you can see, in fact, Zoom is covering up my numbers, so I can't see what. The FY20 actuals, the expense were $725,000. It went down from the previous year because when we shut down, we also try to reduce expenses as well. Our revenue went down to 940. Both went down, but it wasn't too bad. The net income, of course, was positive. So FY20 has already happened. That's what we just finished the audit for last month. Now, once we move to this third column here, this is FY21. This is the year we're currently in, and that will end in June 30th. And so what we've done is we've projected what we think that the numbers will be like by the end of the year. This is a year that's been 100% completely affected by COVID. And our expenses have gone down again to $716,000. And our revenue has gone down even more to $693,000. And I can't see it. Well, anyway, sorry, there's things blocking it, and I'm not sure how to move. FY 2022, this is the budget that we're looking at for this year. This is what for next year. This is what's going to be proposed. This is what we think will happen next year based on conditions right now. We believe that will increase to 786,000. And our revenue will increase as well to 788,000 for a net income of about $2,000, $90. And we'll kind of break that down in a second. Any questions so far?
A quick question. Have you seen an increase in the interest for people coming in to the pool in the past couple of weeks, last month at all?
Not really, no. Lap swim continues to be extremely popular. And, swim lessons, I think people have continued to be asking throughout the years. But I think a lot of people have found places they can kind of do that under the table. But we obviously can't. We have not done that.
I was just wondering if the vaccinations being rolled out has had an impact yet, but not yet, I guess.
Not yet. I think there's a general feeling that something's going to happen this summer. And so what that ends up being really depends on what the county says we're allowed to do. One of the problems is that on one side you have Governor Newsom saying that he believes by June 15th California will be fully open. The problem is that he has a caveat immediately after, which is with masking. And so fully open and with masking is very hard to do in a pool. I don't know what that means for public swim. Does that mean that all of our public swim visitors need to be wearing masks? Are we to do swim lessons with masks? So, there's still a lot of questions that I think will be answered over the next few months. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I go on? Okay. So let's dive into the budget summary. I'm not sure how deep you want me to go, but I'll do the summary first, and then you let me know if you want me to go through all the nitty-gritty stuff. So every month we do a interim financial report, and this is very similar to that interim financial report. These are actual numbers from 2019. This is from 2020. Again, this is that year where we're looking at what we think will happen by the end of the year, and this is our projection for 2022. The notes have added both upward revisions and downward revisions because, again, sometimes you have something that's kind of boosting and then another thing kind of pushing down at the same time. Maybe more on the nitty-gritty side. So for aquatics, again, this, for the proposed, we're looking at a return to having lessons. We didn't really count too much on summer lessons because we just don't know what's going to happen. So the number you're seeing is mostly based on swim lessons resuming in the fall of 2021, so the fall of this year, spring of next year, and we haven't really counted on summer happening. That's really the biggest source of aquatic revenue. The rest of it is really not that much. As far as rental activity, that has been probably permanently damaged, mostly because I think we've lost permanently a few recreation partners that will not come back, I think, at least not for the foreseeable future. So that's actually probably a semi-permanent loss until we can find others who may want to rent the facility. As far as activities are concerned, this is because this is mostly swim camp, $32,000. And that's mostly due to the fact that the revenue is going to be coming mostly from this summer, not next summer. So my expectation is that next summer swim camp is going to be very big and normal, but this year it's going to be spent, and that's where most of that revenue is from. Property tax, again, is up 4%, and it's huge. I mean, going, an additional 20,000 revenues is, and that's one of the main reasons why we haven't been negative, is because property tax has been consistently going up by quite a lot. On the expense side, we have the administration, and again, a big portion of this is going to be the possible master site plan. So, a normal year might be somewhere around 70,000, and so almost all of this is going to be that possible master. As far as the facility is concerned, I think what we're looking at really is around the same as a normal year, but maybe a little bit higher. Utility costs going up, water costs going up, pool chemical costs going up, things of that nature. We don't have any big projects planned. As far as our programs are concerned, again, a return to normal, but not really quite as much as a normal year. Right? Normally we'd have 80-something staff members. We need to accommodate that many employees. This year, I think confirmed we have less than 20. So it's a different year. And as far as personnel expenses, we expect that to be higher than last year, which was pretty much closed, but less than a normal year, which would be much higher. And probably low for a while, simply because it's going to take a few years to be able to recruit up to that level and maintain at a higher level. All in all, does this block your view as well, this bar? Okay. So in any case, $2,000 on a budget of this scale is essentially zero. It's just, it could be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but essentially we're breaking even. Even 20,000 from what we project to lose at the end of this fiscal year is about breaking even, give or take. So kind of expecting. Now, the rest of this is going to be much more into the nitty-gritty. I'm not sure how far, if anyone has an appetite to go that far or take a look at any of the numbers, have any questions. Want me to keep going? I'll keep going. If not, I can take questions. Is there any consensus?
It might help to take questions. See, does anybody have any questions on this page? Maybe before we go on to the next page. Does that work for everybody?
Could they raise it up just a tiny bit?
Raise what up?
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I I was wondering if you could raise the revenue detail up just a tiny bit because I'm losing the last line under my, oh, it's my dumb bar from the Zoom.
Yeah, that's the same problem I was having. Let me see if I can.
Okay. It's not critical. I can read a little bit under it, but oh, that's good. That's really good. Thank you.
Did that work?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's helpful because I can see under the video thing. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so this view that you're seeing here, it actually does provide a little bit more detail than is normal in most of the financial reports that are month to month. Generally, it's a little bit more detailed than is necessary. You know, this for this purpose here. So, is there any questions on this particular page? All right, so I'm going to go on to the expense category. In the administration, again, we're kind of banking on 1 meeting a month plus special meetings. If I haven't put a comment down, it's pretty similar to prior years. I guess one thing to note is that our dues, fees, and subscriptions is expected to go higher and perhaps even much higher. One of the big reasons for that is that software as a service or SaaS is expected to be a source of a lot of expenses in the future, right? You know, before you could buy Microsoft Office once and you could use it for, I don't know, 10 years if you wanted to. Now it seems like everyone wants to charge an annual fee, and it starts to add up, right? Because now your point of sale is going to be using that, your timekeeping stuff is going to be using that, everything adds up. And I expect that we'll be using more and more as we get online. Any questions on this page?
What's the bottom line that we can't read?
Yeah, I can't read that either. It's the consulting fees for this one is 25,000 and this one's 25,000. This one is for the strategic visioning process. This one is estimated for that site master plan. Again, I have no idea what a site master plan will cost, so I just put in a number.
Any other questions?
This is the facility section. So generally, you can think of this as mostly maintenance and upkeep. So this could include janitorial, this could include landscaping, it could include cleaning supplies, things of that nature. The pool is mostly just the pool, right? And here is just chemicals, chlorine, CO2, and a couple of chemicals for reusable purposes. The pool maintenance and supplies, this one is, it's a bunch of different things, but every time we have to call advanced, if we need advanced support, this is where you'll see it. NAS has to come in and change an impeller or something. For utilities, this one is pretty obvious. And then programs, again, advertising, any of our outreach right now is going to be going into there. Program supplies and related, again, anything we need for program supplies, so wetsuits, you know, toys, could even be, what's it called? Swim team suits, for example. We buy them hundreds at a time, so it'd be a $5,000 purchase, things like that. Then snack bar, this one, again, we don't expect it to be open in 2021, only because Public Swim, we don't know what's happening with that one either. But when it does open, it'll be next summer. And again, there's only 2 weeks in fiscal year 2022. Any questions on this one? In terms of the personnel expenses, again, we do believe things will be normalizing, but we're still going to have a staff shortage. So we have kind of this opposing force situation. We believe it will be kind of similar to FY20. So it should be similar, which is good because payroll taxes are kind of related there. So it's going to be pretty similar. We'll be finished paying most of our unemployment expense. in FY 2021. So down. Yeah, so our total expense will be higher than this year, but less than a normal year. All right, any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question. I know you were talking about the personnel and staff and sort of how just we are, currently we're pretty low in terms of the confirmed number of staff we'd be willing to work this summer. I guess, what are your thoughts on like the ways in which we can sort of increase that number or reach out to more previous staff and get them to sort of agree that if we were to offer lessons in the summer, that we could have them on board?
Right, so we're actually already doing quite a bit of hiring. So we've reached out to the local high schools, and we've also put out a mailer that includes a hiring link. And I think so far we have over 20 candidates who have submitted their interest. So generally we're pretty picky with who actually ends up working, only because, again, we're looking for good swimmers, excellent communication ability, and who want to work. And that's not a huge population. I expect that out of those 20, I mean, if we're being generous, maybe 10, maybe 12. And what we can do to quickly get our staffing higher is, it sounds a little bit bad, but we lower our expectations and we spend more time in training. So maybe there's someone who is an excellent communicator, but they just can't, let's say they're just not a good swimmer. What we'll do is we'll actually train them to swim, but it takes time. So that's how we can build it back up again. And then beyond this year, we just have to focus on retention, making sure that our work environment is really fun and makes people want to come back the next year.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think you may have mentioned this before, but like typically, like for maybe 2019, what's sort of the average number of staff we have throughout the entire summer?
80, more than 80.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, is this hiring happening conditional to reopening, or are we just bringing them on board and training?
Right, that's a great question. So what's happening right now is we're only collecting. And so what will happen is the timeline is that we're going to have interviews in May. So then we know, we have a better idea of who's coming back. We're going to have a better idea of what we're allowed to open and how we're allowed to open it. And we have a pool of people. And so we can make a more informed decision at that time. The downside is that we won't have the benefit of early registrations to fill things. So it's a little bit of a juggle and a race against time. And there will be a time where we're going to have to make an educated guess.
Understandable. And it is what it is.
Was there
So there's more unknowable than knowable for this season, basically.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. But we want to make sure that we're in a good position to move in any direction. And since no one's been hired yet, no one needs to be hired until we know. So one other thing that I think we might try to do here is I believe that July is probably a good month. And I think there's a strong likelihood that July is the month where maybe we'll be able to do this. So what we might do is play it safe for June and publish a June schedule that doesn't include some of the things like public or swim lessons. And then as the summer goes on, we can then introduce that later. So instead of publishing the whole summer, maybe we just go month by month.
Instead of the whole summer, maybe half a summer, you're cutting out for me, you know.
Month to month. So we might just publish, say, June, so that way people can plan on June. And then once July becomes clear, we can publish a different summer schedule for July. That includes things that are allowed to be open.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? No.
Steve, I'll put my hand up if everyone else is, I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead, Jennifer. You're
Oh
gonna-
yeah, I'm trying to be very polite. Yes, that, I think doing it month by month is a really good idea, because that way then, believe me, I have great empathy for everyone, because everybody's kind of going like, okay, it's April, May, June, what am I doing? A lot of people, for planning purposes, I think about the best they can do is do month by month right now. So, even for people who have kids that are going back to school, coming back from school, etc., where are they going? I think month by month is a really good way to start out right now, because it's, June 1st is what we're doing, then, a couple more weeks. So I think that's a really good plan. Long range planning right now is really difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any more discussion? If not, I think I should move to approve the budget, because we do need to approve a budget. And this looks, as far as I can see, it looks like this is the closest we're going to come to realistic numbers, given what we don't know, basically. And we have the rules state we have to have a budget by a certain time approved for the coming year. It can be revised, and hopefully it will be if things get better, or change substantially. But I'd like to move to approve the budget.
Second.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Any other questions? And I'll call the roll.
Director Racy,
Aye.
Director Bajaj,
Aye.
Director Chow,
Aye.
Director Seppi,
Yep.
Director Waslowski.
Yes, aye. All right, so approved unanimously. Okay, next item is item 7, approve executing an optional 2-year extension to the contract for the district auditor. The total amount not to exceed $20,226.33.
Okay.
Historically, we've had auditors who've all lasted at least 5 years, and Kevin's made good points in here, I think, about the fact that going out to bid is a labor-intensive process. He can say that better than I can. And so it looks like there's nothing to gain by going out to bid in the next 2 years, because that will bring us up to 5 years with Fechter. But Kevin can present the way he wants to.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is our 3rd year with Fechter Company. They have an option to extend for an additional 2 years at a cost of 2.5 years, or 2.5% per year, which is essentially just inflation. We've worked really well with them, and there's not really a great reason to change. So I think it makes economic sense to remain with Fechter Company for 2 more years, at which point, again, we'll have to make that decision again, whether that be to go out to bid or to switch to lead auditor, which I'm not even sure that Fechter Company has a second auditor, so we may have to go to bid anyway in 2 years.
Sorry, Kevin, can you please mute your other device? Because in the middle, we hear an echo.
Oh, another device?
Yeah, you're logged in twice.
Oh. The other one doesn't have a
Okay. Because
no microphone.
I don't know if it's just me. Sorry. Could be just me then. I heard echo in the middle.
Is anyone else hearing an echo?
No? Okay.
Hear an echo, but it goes in and out.
It's like something else is catching a mic, but not very regularly.
It might be because I got a mic, so the microphone catching.
Maybe bring the mic closer to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. How about now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, was there a question or? Okay.
So anyway, as I said, we've used auditors for at least 5 years in a row, and it's worked out fine. We haven't had any significant findings. Nothing bad has happened. It just saves us the expense of going to bid more frequently, opening the bid. And if Fechter had a way, were larger like the previous auditor, they could just change the lead auditor, and that would be the same as changing the audit firm, because basically it's a fresh set of eyes that's primarily concentrating on auditing a client. So, but I think given everything else the staff has to do, extending their contract for 2 more years is, I think, a desirable thing to avoid going out to bid just for the sake of going out to bid, when it takes, as Kevin knows more than any of us would know, it takes a while to learn to work with each auditor who's different than every other auditor, and what they look for, and you know, what they focus on. Does that pretty much sum it up, Kevin? Yeah. So if no one else wants to, I'll move to approve extending the Fechter for 2 more years.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that?
I'd like to understand more on what exactly is involved with going out to bid.
So with going out to bid, what you're first going to have to do is make a request for proposals. Generally, you're going to have to ask what it is you're looking for. That can be a little bit technical in that, you know, you have to know a little bit about whatever it is you're trying to. Once you have that, then you have to send it out to either newspapers or the CSDA. You post, you wait for a while. I may have to answer a few questions. That's not too bad. Then what happens is people send in their proposals, staff reviews all the proposals, and then eventually, based on, usually the board provides some kind of a rubric for evaluating. And then staff will say, okay, based on the board's rubric, this is the one that we recommend. The board then takes a look at that, and of course, all of the different proposals, and either selects the one that was recommended or selects a different one. Totally fine. We can always select a different one, and then that's the new one. It is kind of a longer process, and it does end up it takes time.
This was done it was done 3 years ago.
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
Other questions? I mean, I'm not seeing it as much of a change, because like I said, the last 3 auditors, the auditor now and the 2 previous auditors have each been our auditor for 5 years at least. And that seems like a good time frame, so that we aren't going out to bid too often, given the fact that it puts a lot of stress on staff for going out to public bid, you know, when it's not broke, you know. And the way it's set up anyway, if at any time it turned out next year you wanted to go out to bid, we could still do that. It doesn't prevent us from doing that. It's just saying, why don't we hang on to them for based on what we see now and their work so far. Let's extend them for 2 more years. You know, that can always change.
It makes sense. There's enough uncertainty right now.
Yeah, that's basic. That's a good way of putting it, you know. So, any other questions? Call the roll.
All right, Director Wasowski,
Aye.
Director Sethi,
Aye.
Director Chow,
Aye.
Director Bajaj,
Aye.
Director Racy.
Aye.
All right, approved. Item 8. Why don't you take the lead on this, Kevin?
Sure.
I think it's good.
Okay. So what we're really looking at here is policy 1015, which is the board policy on the legal counsel and auditor. Section E, this is just again, it's a proposed policy change. It strikes out that selection of legal services should take place in a notice meeting at least every 3 years. It still has to take place in a publicly noticed meeting. The reason for that, again, is the board takes a look at the contract. It's renewed annually every year anyway, so a little bit redundant in there. And then for this one, number 4, this is about the auditor, and it says the selection of the auditor shall take place in a noticed public meeting at least every 3 years. And instead, basically, rotating your auditor is meant to do 3 things. One of them is to make sure that the pricing is the most competitive. Number 2 is to provide a fresh look at the numbers by someone different. The third one is to make sure and maintain the independence of the auditor, so that they don't get too close with management and just take things and looking deeply in them. So there is some value in rotating the auditor every now and again. 3 years is a little bit tight. It's a little bit too much. And the way that this is worded is a little bit, it's a bit ambiguous in that it almost sounds like there has to be a public bidding process, which there doesn't need to be. The competitive bidding processes are long, they're inefficient, it introduces cost. And a more efficient way of doing that is to change the lead auditor. So the lead auditor is the person in charge of the audit. And when they change over within the same firm, it resets the relationship with management. You're still getting a fresh look. And of course, the only downside being that you're not ensuring the most competitive price available. Now, that being said, when you do go out to get that most competitive pricing available, you also lose a little bit by, again, the staff time required to actually vet the proposals, to get in touch and train the new auditors as far as what the organization looks like, what processes are, and what the unique areas of risk are. Additional time that's going to be lost, even if you save money with a competitive process. So this change is simply saying that instead of just selecting every 3 years in a publicly noticed meeting, which is what just happened in the last item, it'll just be requiring the lead auditor to be rotated every 5 years, and that a public bidding process should take place at least every 10 years. Now, that being said, of course, it can happen anytime. The board is always allowed to have a new auditor, new legal counsel, whatever. But this just sets the minimums as to any.
On the legal counsel part, so far from what I've seen, well, it comes up for approval every year, as he says. So it's basically being we examine it every year anyway, and so we don't have to formally examine it every year. The other thing is, if you step back and look at who's the best legal counsel for us, generally I would say it would be county counsel, because they handle the same issues that come up before us. And so let's say a single practitioner, the opposite of county counsel, wouldn't have the breadth and depth to handle all the issues that come up to us as a public agency. But since their staff is already handling and has experience handling the questions that come up to public agencies, they have people on board who are up to speed and are more efficient at being our counsel. So it would be, I think it would be a very unusual circumstance under which we would pick somebody besides county counsel to be our counsel, because they're large enough to, if there are conflicts between the county and the district, they're large enough to pick somebody else on their staff to handle an issue. So, and basically, I think we should adopt this because it goes hand in hand. Definitely number 4 goes hand in hand with what we just adopted.
Just a reminder, though, this is a review and discussion only, no action. The adoption would be next month. It's just the first reading.
Okay, this is the first reading. Yeah, sorry. I get that wrong too often.
I think legal counsel absolutely makes sense. Auditor, I am not convinced yet.
Yeah, and I can see where that might take a little longer. From what I've seen over the last 15 years of audits, I know that none of our auditors, whoever they were, has come up with anything significantly amiss. It's all been tweaks, oh, do this a little bit differently, because the law has changed or something like that. But nothing extraordinarily wrong has been revealed by any of our audits. Is that a good way of putting it, Kevin? I think so. They just said
there was no significant findings.
no significant findings. That's the legal term for it. Yeah, as I understand. And your reservation, I mean, we'll have another month to think it out if we can,
Exactly. It's the first reading, so.
Yeah, it's the first reading.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on it? No? All right. Then next item is consider adoption of amendment to 1035.
Right. So this amendment was correcting something earlier, that there was going to be another policy to be written that was never written. And instead, it might be better just to peg the reimbursement with the per diem expense rates published by the U.S. General Services Administration. They do it every year. So up to date, and we wouldn't have to mess with the policy every year. It makes sense.
Questions? Do we need to call the question on this? I believe so. Yeah. Well, I'll move to approve it, the change, because you're right. It offloads us trying to figure out what reasonable expenses are and puts it in the hands of the GSA and keeping those policies up to date. So.
Yeah, I think it just makes sense. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any questions? No? All right. Roll call.
Director Racy?
Aye.
Director Bajaj?
Aye.
Director Chow?
Aye.
Director Sethi?
Yes.
Director Lasowski?
Yes. That brings unanimously approved. Brings us on to item 10. Just review and discuss the following policies. This is our standard review of a few of the policies every month to make sure we get through all of them in the course of the year. Anybody have any changes to these? Do we want to read, read silently, or what's the best way to do this? I mean,
if you want to, any director can approach in between meetings with any kind of revisions for the ones we've looked at, or even the ones we haven't looked at, or even proposed policy. So, if you don't see something now, or if you saw something somewhere else, or if there's one of the policies that maybe you don't agree with, or you have a better way of writing it, that's something that we can put on for next month as well.
right.
I have a quick question. What is being referenced when it says that they would lose committee assignments? Remedies.
Right. So in larger districts, a lot of times boards will have subcommittees to deal with certain topics. Let's say, for example, LAFCO. LAFCO might be something that the Rancho board might want to form a committee for. And so generally Rancho is small enough where maybe committees aren't necessary all the time. So maybe there'd be ad hoc committees. But there's some districts that are so big it would be perpetual committee assignments. And so board members would kind of, that's really where a lot of the action happens, is on committees. And so removing a board member from a committee is actually pretty punitive. But there's none at Rancho yet.
Okay. I'm not sure where that was in here. Oh, committee. Oh, last paragraph. Committee.
Yeah.
Now I see where it is. Okay.
Yeah. Not quite as punitive for Rancho board members.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Oh, good. Go through them at least. Okay.
Makes sense to me.
What was that?
Go to the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. I have a question for attendance. Just in a final sentence, I don't know if I see this anywhere earlier, but what makes an absence excused?
Traveling?
Illness?
Party? Not definitely, no. Not an excuse.
Right. Yeah, parties don't count. You're right.
Just reach out to Kevin and he'll tell you if it's excusable or not.
I think isn't it the chair that
Okay, reach out to see
yeah,
then.
the chair will determine whether it's excused. We can always strike this language too. I mean, if it's best to have policy that follows exactly what we're going to be doing. So if we don't do that, then we should do that.
I mean, it's very minor, but we could just add that in the second paragraph, that notifying the chair is what makes it excused, or that might be like the easiest option.
Well, yeah. And the general manager usually is easier to reach. That's why I think it's phrased the way it is. For instance, he knew that Kevin was going to be a couple minutes late, and I noticed he was a couple minutes late. So yeah, right after the consent calendar, if I remember right. So I think you got here about 6:36, right, Kevin, or 6:35, something like that. And then I noticed you were down on the bottom. So I go, okay, he missed the consent calendar, you know. So, I just wanted to ask that question so that in the minutes it says, yeah, you got here at 6:36 or whatever after the consent calendar. Just a record for God knows 20 years from now when somebody cares, you know.
So if I understand this correctly, then maybe just a little footnote at the bottom. What makes something excused? And that would be notifying either the GM or the chair or something like that.
Yeah, because looking at a larger frame, if it turns out that Kevin finds out that 3 of us can't make it, I go, oh, well then I guess we've got to reschedule the meeting, you know. So that's why you let him know if you're going to be later or absent, you know, because he's the central point of contact. Without his function is without the consequences of the Brown Act, you know. So that's why it works. I think that pretty much gives it, you know. But you're right. We could try and figure out what's excused, you know. This is pretty straightforward.
Can I go on to the next one?
Why not? All right. I'm assuming everybody read this before read these before the meeting anyway.
Then good to go.
All right, ready? Okay.
I think we've already talked about this, and I love the flip a coin. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping everybody's completed their ethics and sexual harassment prevention training and orientation process.
Last thing on the agenda.
Did you have something, Kevin?
Oh, that might be the last item. This is the last item on the agenda.
Yeah, that's the last item on the agenda. Yeah. All right. Well, we've reviewed them and discussed them, so no action to be taken. That's the end of the published agenda. So I guess I could entertain a motion to adjourn unless anybody has anything else to say before.
Move to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. 7:29.